Hi everyone, welcome to the presentation on predictors of job performance. As we all know that predicting future events is one common aspect of our life that we have all done. We have all tried to guess who will be the winner in a marathon. We have all tried to guess which questions will be on the exam or test. But some people also make prediction a large part of their jobs, such as industrial psychologists. They use information that is currently available in order to make judgments about future events. And in most cases, in the field of industrial psychology and human resource management as a whole, the area in which prediction happens a lot is during the selection process, employment selection process. Employment selection is a critical stage or is a critical feature of human resource management in all organizations, irrespective of their structure, irrespective of their size or which sector the organization is from. During selection, there are various selection methods that are used to predict future job performance. And in this presentation, we are going to provide a brief description on what are those predictors that can be used to predict job performance. As you can see on the screen, with a number of applicants that apply for a job, there should be one applicant that fits the requirements of the organization, that matches the needs of the organization. And that applicant is selected because those who are making decisions about the applicant's knowledge, skills, abilities, and competencies believe that those skills will match the job and will mean the applicant will be successful in that job. So let's take a closer look at what exactly determines future job performance. Some people might say intelligence determines future job performance or success in a job. Some people might say it's technical knowledge that is important. It's the skills that a person has that will determine future job performance. Some people might argue that socioeconomic background of an applicant is an important determinant of whether or not the employee will be successful in a job. Some say educational success is an important predictor of job performance, which makes sense because most applications, they need some sort of a qualification. So the question is, what are the value of these things in determining job performance? Because you don't only want people with qualification, we don't only want people with intelligence, with the skills to perform the job, but we also want people who will perform the job successfully. There are various predictors of job performance in the field of industrial psychology. But for the purpose of this presentation, I am only going to focus on 5. That is application banks, interviews, ability tests, personality tests, and assessment centers. Looking at application forms or application blanks, when candidates apply for a job in an organization, they are usually asked to complete an application form. And most organizations utilize this application form as means of collecting pre-employment information from the applicant. One important thing or aspect or feature of an application form is that it is self-report data that is provided by an applicant, and it reflects the applicant's past experiences, and it reflects the applicant's past behaviors and experiences. It could be in a work context. For example, an applicant might say, I have worked for this and that company, for 5 years, and also educational setting. An applicant might say, I have obtained cum laude in my BCom degree. Also, regarding community activities, these include the type of activities that the applicant has been involved in that can be of advantage in an employment setting. That sort of shows commitment to other activities. One important thing to note about application forms is that they are self-report data. But although their personal experiences are being used to predict outcomes at work. One fundamental problem with the use of application forms is identifying which information provides a useful assessment for future job performance. And there's also an ongoing argument on whether application forms are valid predictors of job performance. Some say they're not valid if people can fake the information. However, for first level selection, application form has been found to be one of the best predictors of job performance compared to other types of predictors. As highlighted, the use of application forms as predictors of job performance has its own limitations. As we all know that when people are competing for a job, people tend to believe that it is advantageous to look good. In that case, they tend to provide false information about their past experiences. They tend to provide false information about the salaries they've earned in their jobs, in their past jobs, the companies they work for, and things like that. So the applicant may attempt to conceal certain information in their employment history, in their lives. Some people might even lie about their criminal convictions. So the use of application form in selection as predictors of job performance should be used with caution. Moving over to interviews. Interviews are the most common methods that are used in selecting employees for a post, for employment in general. During the interview, candidates are being asked questions about the job. They're being assessed as a person. That's where they check whether you're shaved, whether you have confidence in yourself, whether you're dressed formal or not. Questions such as, tell us more about your strengths and weaknesses. Those are the questions that are being asked. That's where the interviewer tries to gauge information from the interviewee. So it is a dialogue that is initiated by one or more persons to gather information and evaluate the applicant's qualification for employment. Although most people are not comfortable with the interview, it is a flexible tool that is used, provided it is conducted properly, and it provides information that can be used by both the interviewer and the interviewee for making quality decisions. It can help the interviewee in deciding whether is this the job that I want to do, is this the company that I want to work for. It also helps the interviewer in deciding whether the applicant has the right skills for the job. Most selection interviews are unstructured. There is questions that are being asked are left to the interviewer to decide which questions to ask. So there is no agreed upon standards on how to evaluate the employee's performance during the interview. And research has shown that unstructured interviews are not particularly useful for predicting job performance because of its nature. They're highly subjective because they can lead to global evaluations of the applicants that is not so useful for the job, that is not so useful for the interviews. People might start talking about things that are outside the scope of the interviews, and there's no consistency with the applicants as to which questions should be asked to interviewers. And in order to combat the weakness of unstructured interviews, there's current evidence that stresses that structured interviews should be asked in order to predict job performance. Structured interviews then consist of specific set of questions that are designed to assess skills, knowledge, abilities of applicants that are required for the job. Structured interviews, they rely on more objective evaluation procedures, such as asking only job-relevant questions, and viewers are provided training on interviewing skills. There are established rating standards that are used during structured interviews. And that is just one advantage, because there's a rating criteria that is used, and it also helps the judges to make quality decisions and also to ensure effectiveness and also to assess the effectiveness of the responses from the interviewee. In order for interviews to work well, in order to be a valid predictor of job performance, it needs to be administered properly. The interviewer must be trained on how to answer questions, on how to ask questions, and also the interview should be able to probe for additional information and also apply their rating criteria accurately. So with the interview, thirdly, we're going to talk about ability test. There's a variety of ability tests that is used to measure a variety of mental abilities, such as verbal, mathematical ability, reasoning ability, and reading comprehension. In essence, ability test measures some form of knowledge, and it could be mathematical knowledge, it could be reasoning ability, it could be your reading and all that. And employees, in most ability tests, employees are assessed on a variety of abilities. So a score that is obtained from cognitive ability test is a good predictor of job performance, because that score is a composite score that is obtained from using multiple scales. There is evidence that cognitive ability tests are useful predictors of job performance. That is why they are frequently used in most selection practice. Cognitive ability tests have been shown to be extremely useful predictors of job performance, and thus are used frequently in many selection decisions for many different types of jobs. Also, they assess a person's aptitude or potential to solve job-related problems by providing information about their mental abilities, such as verbal or mathematical reasoning, and perceptual abilities like speed in recognizing letters of the alphabet. According to research, successful people in the workplace achieve their success through the balance of three kinds of abilities. They say it's analytical abilities, creative, and practical abilities. These abilities do not necessarily coincide, and a person who is strong in one of these areas will not necessarily be strong in others. Therefore, if selection decisions are to be effective, it is necessary that a person is tested on each of these areas. There's advantages and disadvantages of using ability tests. The first advantage has to do with ability tests. Firstly, they predict job performance, particularly for more complex jobs. They have been demonstrated to produce valid inferences for a number of organizational outcomes as well, such as success in training. In most, in the military, they use mostly ability tests in order to select people who will be doing pilot training, people who will be Navy divers, and all those complex jobs. Another advantage is that they can be administered via paper and pencil. There's also computerized method, so they can be administered to a large group of people, and therefore very cheap to administer. They do not necessarily require a trained person to do it. Anybody can do it. One disadvantage of using ability tests is that they are quite time consuming to develop. They take a lot of time to go through validation, developing norms, and things like that. So, but they are very predictors of job performance. Moving over to personality tests, selection researchers have found that personality data, when gathered properly, can provide valid information for making selection decisions. As a result, the use of personality tests in predicting job performance is rapidly increasing. The assumption is that if we can assess aspects of a person's personality, we should be able to predict more or less how the person will behave in the job. Secondly, we could also make person-job fit deduction based on what type of behavior is required in a job. So, personality tests provide useful information in the job, not only about whether the person will perform the job, but whether the person fits the job. The personality factors that are assessed most frequently in work situations include conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, openness to experience, and emotional stability. And research has shown that conscientiousness is the most useful predictor of performance across many different jobs, including the military. Advantages of using personality tests is that it can be administered to a large group of participants since it uses paper and pencil method, some are computerized. Secondly, personality tests have been demonstrated to produce valid inferences for a number of organizational outcomes, such as organizational citizenship behaviors. Limitations with the use of personality tests is that participants tend to respond in a socially desirable manner and that may compromise the results. Secondly, the use of personality tests may be problematic if the test is used to diagnose medical conditions rather than simply to assess work-related personality traits. Then we have assessment centers. Assessment centers employ multiple assessment methods and exercises to evaluate a wide variety of competencies used to make a variety of employment decisions. They measure many different types of job-oriented competencies, which includes interpersonal skills, oral and written communication, planning and evaluation, reasoning, and problem solving. One type of assessment that is common is the in-basket exercise. When an in-basket exercise is used to simulate administrative tasks, then during the exercise, applicants will be asked to play a role of a person who's probably new in the job, and then they're instructed to read and react to a pile of memos, messages, reports, and articles. In that case, an applicant's behavior will be observed on how they respond to different tasks, how do they respond to all those things. Then the applicant performance is usually observed and evaluated by multiple assessors. Then, at the end of the assessment center, the raters will meet to make the overall judgment about people's performance in the center. While assessment centers can be designed for a variety of jobs, they are particularly useful for assessing high-level managerial and leadership competencies. There's also advantages and disadvantages of using assessment centers. The first advantage is that it focuses more heavily on behavior demonstration than just simply assessing the characteristics of a person. So it is based on observed behavior in relation to the job. It makes use of trained assessors, which is a good thing. It also minimizes bias, and it also minimizes subjectivity in rating. And one disadvantage of using assessment centers is that they are very costly to create and administer. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.